The Children's Japan by Mrs. W.H. Smith. T. Hasegawa. 17 Kami Nejushi Tokyo. Introduction. This little work, printed on Hasegawa's untearable crepe, will it is hoped be welcomed for the fact that it can be placed in the hands of very young as well as older children without Methal's fear of torn leaves and dislocated covers. These books can be subjected to an amount of rough usage which no other books can stand. The author therefore hopes the Children's Japan will be so well received as to justify her bringing out other children's works in the same style. Copyright reserved. Japanese houses. Japanese house has no bricks, no walls, no chimneys, and no windows. This sounds very funny, and so it is, yet a Japanese house is both pretty and comfortable. The most prominent thing about it is made of large as the roof, which is made of large heavy tiles and projects some distance beyond the sides. This roof is supported on posts, which are not buried in the ground as you would expect them to be, but rest upon large flat stones, so that the house may rock to and fro upon the stones when shaken, instead of falling. All the rooms are on the one floor and are separated by sliding doors made of paper, which you push in and out when you go from one room to another, or take them out altogether if you wish to make your room large. The side of the house consists of more sliding doors, made of very thin white paper through which light comes, but you cannot see outside, unless you put your finger through and make a hole. The floors are covered with soft white mats which are pretty and clean, and the low ceilings are made of wooden planks. How the Japanese live. Japanese, though the most artistic people in the world, are also the most simple in their daily lives. Their furniture consists of 2 or 3 heavy quilts called futons for each person, and which serve them for both bed and bedclothes. Some small, flat cushions on which they sit, very small tables about 6 inches high, several hibachis or fire boxes, and some lamps, cups, bowls, wooden tubs, and saucepans. These things, with of course clothes, which are kept in a sort of chest of drawers, and a beautifully painted silken scroll which answers to our picture, are the principal belongings of a Japanese family. Chairs are not used, neither are knives, forks, nor spoons, everything for which we require the latter articles being done by 2 dainty little sticks called chopsticks, which the Japanese use very cleverly. These people rise early, and go to bed early, are nearly always cheerful, and very polite to each other and strangers. They laugh and chatter at their work, but are not of course so busy as Europeans are in their houses, as they have so little to dust and keep tidy and clean. Japanese babies. Wonder what you romping merry children at home would say to Japanese babies. Poor little things, I fancy you would say when you first saw them, and poor little things many people say after they have seen them very often. The Japanese baby practically spends the first 2 years of its life tied to someone else's back, and its happiness during that period depends very largely on that someone else's inclination to continually move on. Its little legs are tied tight to the other person's back, and a string is passed under its little arms and round that other person's neck. Then its arms and head are allowed free play. As the poor mite's chief amusement is sleeping and it has no pillow or other support, the little head hangs first one side and then on the other. Unless indeed it falls straight back, and you wonder every time you see it so why its neck does not break. But it does not, and after sleeping thus for a time, baby will perhaps suddenly wake up and begin looking round it in a contented, happy manner. Japanese babies sometimes cry, of course. But it is generally because they are hungry, or the string has become too tight, or the other person has stood still too long. I think considering they have so little amusement and are always tied up. Japanese babies cry less than any others in the world. Older babies. Tihi children in Japan, like the babies, are nearly all good. They give far less trouble than you do, little folks, but there are certain reasons for this. In the first place, they are not so big and strong as English children, and do not care for such noisy and mischievous play. In the second, the more genial climate enables them to be out of doors a great deal. Then there are so few things to knock over in the houses and get scolded for. No white pinafores, Sunday frocks, patent leather shoes to spoil and make their lives unhappy, and lastly, people are not continually worrying them to learn something. They lead a gentle, happy, innocent, childlike life, and the consequence is they are good-tempered bright little butterflies, and very seldom squabble and fight. They have many very funny and interesting games, and depend upon them far more for amusement than they do upon toys, though there are thousands of quaint toys. Japan, very, very cheap, but unfortunately easily broken. A Japanese holiday. Gaily the troubadour, are the words which flash across one's mind as you stand for the first time gazing down a Japanese street in all its bravery of holiday attire. From every doorway hang flags and lanterns of red and white bobbing and fluttering in the sunshine and the breeze, while every low roof is garlanded from end to end with rustling paper streamers, and many colored draperies hang from the low galleries of the upper rooms, where such exist. The streets are crowded with brightly dressed children, happy in the possession of a new kimono frock or obi sash, or chattering and laughing over some newly purchased toy. The shops are all open, and business appears to go on in much the same way as usual, but at holiday time there is more laughing and joking than real business. So quiet and orderly in their fun the Japanese are, that you would feel inclined to think they were not enjoying themselves if you did not know their ways. They love to see their children brightly, their streets decorated and dressed, and when the lanterns are all lighted at night, with strings of bright red lanterns festooned here and there, glowing like rubies in the dark, Europeans find it very easy to enjoy the bright and pretty scene as much as their Japanese neighbors. Japanese music. You may perhaps have heard that nothing is more distinctly at variance than Eastern and Western ideas of music. In almost all other things the European and the Eastern find something which they both admire, but in music it is not so. The European satisfies his musical appetite with the resonant tones of the cornet and bassoon, the pathetic strains of the violin and harp, the full, rich chords of the organ and piano, whose lingering tones thrill his heart with holy impulses, and the harsh but lively refrains of the street organ. The Eastern satisfies his with very much less, in fact I might almost say with little more than a half-tuned set of 3 strings and something to twang them with. The Chinaman does not go so far as 3 strings in all his instruments, many have only 1, and the Indian revels mostly in a drum, but in Japan a greater variety of music is found, and after some time one grows to like the samisen and koto when played for a very short time, and half a street away. Variety of music is found, and after some time one grows to like the samisen and koto when played for a very short time, and half a street away. Most Japanese players prefer playing the whole day when they once begin, however. The koto is a very difficult instrument, and the Japanese play it very cleverly with little pointed ivory thimbles on their fingers with which they click the strings. The samisen is more like the banjo, but not so highly tuned, and it is played with a piece of ivory something like a shoulder. The jinriksha In old days before foreigners lived in Japan, and indeed for many years after, the only means of being conveyed from place to place in this country excepting shanks was a small, square, uncomfortable basket strung on 2 poles borne by 2 or 4 men, this depending on the weight of the person carried. This conveyance bore a very distant relationship to the sedan chairs used by your great government. And mine, little reader, but was ever so much more inconvenient and uncomfortable even than that. Then there was an ingenious burgher, so now say he was a Frenchman, who had a happy thought, and it shaped itself into a jinrikisha. A blade of mutton. Now if you want to know what riding in a nice jinrikisha, pulled by a strong and active man along a very good road, is like, just fancy to yourself what it would be to ride along in the most comfortable drawing-room armchair fixed firmly on 2 bicycle wheels and drawn by a Shetland pony. And if you want to get some idea of what riding in a nasty jinrikisha, pulled by a decrepit and semi-defunct man on a bad road is, mentally substitute old perambulator wheels for the tired ones, start your journey in a ploughed field in dry weather, with a wall-eyed and sulky donkey in the shafts, and you will know all about it. There are all sorts of jinrikisha in Japan. Manner and dress. Japanese manners and Japanese dress are 2 of the most charming characteristics of the country. After a long residence you discover that the politeness does not mean very much perhaps, still it is charming, this wondrous courtesy, and you compare it very favorably with the bluff rudeness of Western people. The men are beginning to adopt European dress because it is more convenient for active work, but happily everyone agrees that Japanese women do not look well in European clothes, and so few beyond the court ladies and ministers' wives wear them. The Japanese dress consists of a narrow, straight robe not unlike our morning gowns, the sash in the woman's dress being broad and very long, fastening into a large, flat knot at the back. The woman's chief care is her hair. More time and attention is paid to this part of her appearance than any other, but few Europeans do more than marvel at the wonderful structure when it is dressed for some special occasion. The costume of both men and women is completed by snow-white socks with a separate compartment for the great toe, and substantial wooden sandals which make a cheerful clatter on the pavements as the wearers jog and shuffle along in their amiable happy-go-lucky way. Japanese skill. Young folks do not understand or care much about that rare science we call art, and I shall not therefore talk to you about Japan's Satsuma, her lacquer, or her cloison, though if you ever visit Japan you will find many beautiful things which you can both understand and admire under these mystic titles. In the humblest street you will chance upon many things that you would never find in Europe and America, and you pause in admiration of some poor artisan's wondrous taste and capacity of creating much out of nothing. As carvers both in wood and ivory, the Japanese excel perhaps any people in the world, not only in the skillfulness of their work but the taste and originality of its treatment. They delight in making small things. You would be charmed with the miniature Japanese houses in wood and canework of lace-like fineness, the inlaid work in different colored woods in which the finest patterns the most popular, reminding one of the old Roman mosaics that you must have heard of. You would admire too the beautiful little silver boxes with their quaint little figures in gold upon the lids, the pretty hanging scrolls with their delicately painted scenes, and the fragile cups and plates which seem as if they were not strong enough for common use. But I could not tell you in this small space half the pretty things to be seen in Japan, and I can only hope in bidding you sayonara that you will someday be able to come and see them for yourselves.